I want to wish all of my viewers, my subscribers, and anyone else who watches my channel a Merry Christmas and a thanks to all the support they have given me. For this occasion, I've decided to read the first chapter of Miracle on 34th Street by Valentine Davis. If you searched every old folks' home in the country, you couldn't find anyone who looked more like Santa Claus. He was the living, breathing incarnation of the old gent. White beard, pink cheeks, fat tummy and all, and his name was Kris Kringle. 2. Whether this was a coincidence or design, a sort of stage name he had assumed, his friends at the Maplewood Home for the Aged never knew. Nor did they know exactly how old he was. His white whiskers made him look a good 75, and yet when he laughed or walked you would swear he wasn't a day over 50. His eyes were quick and happy, and he had a smile to match. Not only did Kris look precisely like Santa Claus, he firmly believed he was that jolly old gentleman. Dr. Pierce, the physician at Maplewood, found this delusion innocent and harmless. In fact, the old man's kindly shrewdness in all other respects had won the doctor completely. He was devoted to Kris and was his staunchest defender. He often came to visit his little room at Maplewood. It was littered with toys of all shapes and sizes, half-finished models and catalogs. Kris spent most of his time there, smoking his pipe and whittling at his toys. One November morning when Dr. Pierce dropped in, Kris hardly noticed him. He was reading a newspaper advertisement, and his eyes snapped with indignation as he read. A shopping service offered to make all purchases of Christmas gifts well in advance of the holiday and save the subscriber 10% in the bargain. All you have to do is send us the name and ages of all the people you wish to remember, Kris read aloud. We will relieve you of the irksome necessity of Christmas shopping. Angrily, Kris threw the paper on the floor. Is this what Christmas has degenerated into, Doctor? He asked. It's pure commercialism. Is there no true Christmas spirit left in the world? Dr. Pierce was afraid not. Christmas had certainly been commercialized. It had become big business, and the spirit behind it seemed to be lost in the million crowds that packed all the stores. Kris was not prepared to believe that, in spite of outward appearances and ads like this. No, doctor, he said, underneath all the hurry and bustle, people still believe in Santa Claus and all Christmas stands for. He suddenly smiled at the doctor and asked him what he wanted for Christmas. I'll tell you what I want, said Pierce half to himself, an X-ray machine. We've needed one here for years. You shall have it, Kris said. The doctor smiled. If I get an X-ray machine, I'll know you're Santa Claus. You just wait, doctor. You'll see. Kris picked up a toy and started to whittle away on it, cheerfully pulling at his pipe. But Dr. Pierce was worried. A frown settled over his pleasant face as he watched Kris working. There was something on his mind, and he groped for the right words. Finally, he forced himself to come right out with it. Kris, you'll have to leave Maplewood. Why? Asked Kris in astonishment. Well, the doctor explained, he had been fighting the board on this for years, but they had finally overruled him and issued a definite order. In fact, there was nothing more Pierce could do. Kringle still didn't understand. Well, Kris, the laws of the state and Maplewood's charter only allow us to keep old people so long as they are in good physical and mental health. What's the matter with me? Asked Kris. You've told me I'm in better physical shape than 90% of your patients, and mentally, well, I've passed all your tests with flying colors. Look, I still remember that last one. Kris proceeded to go through the routine of a simple mental test, adding and subtracting, giving synonyms for words, and so forth. There was no doubt about it. He knew all the answers. Mr. Kringle, in spite of his age, was keen, alert, and exceptionally skillful. I know, said the doctor quietly, but it's this Kris Kringle business. You know, we've discussed it before. You mean because I'm Santa Claus? The doctor nodded slowly. But there's nothing wrong about that, said Kris. It happens to be the truth. It's not quite that simple, Pierce replied. Unfortunately, the board does not believe in Santa Claus, Kris, so you're technically, well, not acceptable. So I'm not sane because the board of directors doesn't believe in Santa Claus? That's one way of putting it, admitted Dr. Pierce. Kris paused and reflected for a moment. What happens next? He asked. Pierce explained that Maplewood had an arrangement with the Mount Hope Sanitarium. That nut house? Kris exploded. Never. But what's your alternative? Pierce asked him. Have you got any money? Kris examined a small checkbook which lay on his desk. He had $34.86. Chris, you're pretty old, said Dr. Pierce. It won't be easy to earn a living. And if you're unsuccessful, you will become a ward of the state. And if you're picked up because you tell somebody you're Santa Claus, you'll be sent to Mount Hope anyway. So why not go direct? But Chris was adamant. There was nothing wrong with him, and he'd be damned if he was going to an asylum. Dr. Pierce finally conceded that it was really up to Chris. If he left Maplewood, nobody would bother him. That would end the case as far as they were concerned. But what could Chris do? How could he fend for himself? He didn't have much money. Where could he stay? The zookeeper in Central Park is a friend of mine. I'll stay with him, Chris answered. Dr. Pierce urged him to reconsider and accept the transfer philosophically. You'll have time to think it over. We'll talk about it again, he said as he moved toward the door. Chris nodded silently, but there was a look of determination on the old man's face. The moment the doctor had gone, he hauled out a large suitcase from his closet and briskly began to pack.